The first time I woke up, it was to chaos. Sirens wailed in discordant symphony with the rumble of collapsing masonry. My head throbbed like a swarm of metal wasps had taken up residence there, and when I peeled my eyes open they protested against the blinding light filtering through swirling layers of dust. I remember choking, coughing until I tasted something sharp and coppery. Disorientation painted my world in swirling hues as I struggled to my knees. The world was tilting. No, I was stumbling, scrambling, for what? I couldn't fathom. Memory flickered like a broken hollow projector. Flashes of a world on fire, monstrous shadows against blood-red skies, something vast and terrible, and a face. His face. I couldn't think of his name, only that it was important. But it was the searing pain, the kind that gnaws at your bones, that jolted me into action. Something wasn't right. Not with the world, not with me. I fumbled, my fingers catching against the rough fabric of a uniform. It was shredded, burned, not like the uniform I remembered. This felt old. That's when the first scream reached me. It sliced through the din, a jagged knife of terror rising and shattering abruptly. A woman's voice. Or perhaps not a woman. I couldn't tell anymore. Something was coming. Instinct, honed over a lifetime I couldn't remember, dragged me to my feet. We drilled for this, I knew. Panic was a contagion, to be neutralized with swift action. I had to find the others, get organized. I stumbled down a corridor, the once smooth walls now pockmarked and cracked. Bodies lay amidst the rubble, mine? Our people. The coppery tang in the air grew stronger. My guts roiled, but I swallowed it back. There wasn't time to be sick. A figure emerged from the smoke tendrils ahead, a dark silhouette with too many limbs. It scuttled like a spider, its movements wrong in a way that sent ice down my spine. And there it was, memory flashing back in a tide of red. The war. We called them the Skith, though that wasn't their true name. It was the closest we could manage to the guttural screech they used, a sound that haunted my nightmares. It saw me, several eyes gleaming with unnatural light in its chitinous head. Those beady eyes widened. I was a ghost to them, a relic from a bygone era. They believed they'd wiped us out, ground our resistance to dust. Fools. My fist slammed into its multifaceted face, the satisfying crunch echoing in the cavernous bunker. That was for someone. I couldn't recall the name, a casualty in my fragmented memory. It didn't matter. It was mine now, as real as the rage burning through my veins. The creature screeched as I rained down blows, its chitinous shell surprisingly fragile. It reared back, bringing down a spiny forelimb. I barely dodged, the limb gouging a line across my cheek. Burning pain bloomed where the acid of its blood splattered. Harper. The name struck like a meteor, clearing the haze in my mind. A woman sprinted from the dust cloud, standard issue rifle in hand. Her name echoed in my skull, Amelia. A rush of heat filled me, relief so sharp it speared through the adrenaline fog. I thought you were. My voice was rough, barely recognizable. Still kicking, as you can see, Amelia replied, her lips twisting into a grim smile. The world snapped into focus. I wasn't alone. We weren't ghosts, just buried deep and biding our time. The bunker, it was a vault, designed to protect the last remnants of what we once were. The vanguard, the old guard of a war the world thought we lost centuries ago. Where's command? I grunted, kicking the Skith carcass away in disgust. Amelia's face hardened. Wiped out in the first blast. Protocols clear, Harper. We command now. The weight of it felt less like steel on my shoulders and more like an entire, blasted moon. We were all that was left. If we failed, humanity failed. No pressure. We gathered what troops we could find. A meager lot, techs, engineers, a few hardened veterans like myself, most young faces marked with shock and grim determination. This wasn't the elite force we used to be, but it was all we had. Amelia and I led them deeper into the bunker complex, away from whatever carnage lay at its entrance. Our armor felt more like a shroud than any kind of protection against what we'd seen just a glimpse of. These suits were made for human foes, tactical strike weapons meant to outmaneuver and overwhelm. But the Skith was something else entirely. Harper, Amelia's voice crackled through my helmet's battered comms, what's the word? This place should have the motherlode. A central arsenal at least. I was hoping you could tell me, I replied dryly. My pulse echoed a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The layout of the complex was a fractured mirror in my mind, whole sections veiled in the same amnesia that stole my past. The vanguard always prided itself on preparation. Stockpiles of weapons from every era dotted our hidden network of shelters, enough to gear up a small army. Only, this didn't feel like a small army kind of fight. Tech kids found this. Amelia nudged a handheld device at me, its cracked screen displaying a crude schematic. My frown deepened. The bunker was far larger than this readout suggested. There has to be more. There should have been more of us, too. Her voice held a bitter edge I knew all too well. We were relics from a forgotten age, veterans of a hopeless battle. We'd watched comrades fall, cities crumble, whole planets burn. The guilt of survival sat heavy on me, a barbed wire wrapped around my lungs. I should have been with those lost friends. Should have been a name forgotten on some dusty war memorial. Yet, here I was. We rounded a corner, and I nearly stumbled. The armory. Or what was left of it. Charred racks lined the walls, most shockingly empty. A scattering of blades and a handful of energy weapons lay like the discarded toys of a petulant giant. This made no sense. There should have been enough in here to fight a small war. Skith. Amelia didn't need to say more. They must have gotten in deeper than we realized, looted before they detonated the upper levels. My stomach churned with the kind of cold fury that burns brighter than any open flame. It was a primal instinct, one the vanguard had spent years shaping into something more tactical. It was why we survived when others fell. Why they chose this slumber instead of the eternal kind. We can't let them have it, I rasped. The it was unspoken. The tech, the intel. Anything that could give them an edge, anything that could shift an already desperate war further into the darkness. And how do you propose we stop them? Amelia's question hung heavy. Even her usual spark of defiance struggled in this dim space where hope seemed to wither. I didn't have a brilliant plan, no stroke of tactical genius waiting to burst forth. All I had was a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Not when we'd come so far, survived so long. We adapt, I answered, forcing a steadiness into my voice I wasn't sure I possessed. If the old toys are gone, we build new ones. The techs rallied first. A motley bunch, more used to datapads than plasma rifles, but behind their fearful eyes was a spark of that old human defiance. I recognized that look. It was what fueled impossible rebellions, what made the underdogs snarl against the odds. Old Earth tech, I said, nodding towards a crate of salvaged electronics that looked a century behind the curve. We might not have the raw firepower to match them, but we can be smarter. Rig up traps, jury-rigged drones, turn this place into a hunter's maze. Slowly, nods rippled amongst the frightened faces. This wasn't a clean win, not the surgical strikes I was used to. This was going to be down and dirty, a desperate gamble of cunning versus raw strength. It was ugly. And just maybe, it was our only shot. We spent the next few hours in a blur of sweat and salvage tech. It was a dance of desperation, a mad fusion of the old and the barely understood. The Skith were creatures of instinct warped by a twisted technology, they'd laugh at our crude traps if they understood the concept of humor. But that was our bet, that they wouldn't see the desperation behind our ploys, wouldn't anticipate the suicidal cunning of a cornered animal. It was just after we finished wiring the main corridor with a tangle of salvaged sensor nets and jury-rigged explosives that the first wave hit. We heard them before we saw them, a chorus of chitinous clicking and shrill cries that set teeth on edge. Then, shadows in the dimly lit tunnel, a skittering tide of insectal forms. Ready? Amelia's voice was a thread over the comms, but her fingers were steady on the detonator. Hold it, hold it. I strained to see through the gloom, counting heartbeats to calibrate the trap. The lead Skith crossed an invisible line. Now. The world detonated. Shrieks echoed off the crumbling walls as the makeshift bombs painted the tunnel in hellish flashes. Chitinous limbs flailed, black blood sprayed and the acrid stench of burned flesh filled the air. It wasn't enough. More poured forth, a grotesque, writhing mass surging over the remains of their comrades. I snatched up a plasma rifle from a tech's trembling hands and unleashed a stream of searing energy. It vaporized the closest creatures, but there were far too many. Fall back, I yelled, the order bitter on my tongue. Retreat wasn't part of our doctrine, but neither was fighting a battle we couldn't win. We sprinted deeper into the bunker, luring the Skith into our maze. Each corner became a kill box, each dead end a desperate stand. The echoing reports of our guns mixed with guttural screeches and the thunder of collapsing rock as we brought down sections of the tunnel behind us, buying precious seconds. Harper, Amelia choked out between breaths, we're down to a handful, running out of places to run. We reached a massive chamber, the junction of several tunnels. An echo of memory flickered, training missions from a lifetime ago, 100 simulations played out in this very room. My hands moved without conscious thought, directing the troops. Rig the charges, seal the entrance tunnels, I barked. We were turning this cabin into a tomb, for them and maybe us too. Harper, what the hell are you planning? Amelia asked. The unspoken accusation, that I was ready to sacrifice them all, stung more than any blaster wound could. My gaze swept over the ragged survivors. Some were barely old enough to shave, others grizzled veterans like me, haunted by the same ghosts. I met Amelia's eyes, a silent plea for trust I wasn't sure I deserved. We're not just buying time, I said, forcing each word over clenched teeth. Amelia, remember Project Starfall? Her eyes widened in dawning horror. That was a last-ditch theory, a suicide run. You can't. We can, and we will. If we're all that's left, the world needs a reset, I said, my voice shaking. Rig it. Starfall, a theoretical strike so devastating it was whispered as a doomsday failsafe. Designed to collapse a vast underground network, it was meant to bury a monstrous enemy at the cost of an entire region. Our tutors had called it a war crime, but sometimes the unthinkable was the only path left. And then, the plot twist that made my stomach lurch. Harper. A text scrambled over, eyes wide in panic. Movement signatures. They're everywhere, tunneling in from all sides. Trapped. The Skith had outmaneuvered us, their burrowing instincts trumping our desperate tactics. This was it. The end. Then, as I was about to give the order, as I prepared to consign us all to a fiery grave, something impossible happened. The sensors went wild. Not Skith signatures, but human. Dozens, no hundreds. Reinforcements? How? My voice was barely a whisper. This wasn't possible. The answer thundered down the tunnels, an explosion, but not ours. Rock shook, dust billowed, and then boots on concrete, shouts, gunfire. It was chaos, beautiful chaos, and in the flickering strobe of combat lights, I caught sight of something that made me forget to breathe. They were Vanguard. We weren't alone. The Vanguard flowed in like a river breaking its banks, armored figures wielding unfamiliar weapons, their movements a blur of precision. They tore through the skittering Skith, clearing our choke points, buying us time we didn't deserve. What in the seven hells? Amelia breathed, her disbelief echoing my own. Then, a face emerged from the maelstrom. It should have been impossible after centuries deep in stasis, but there he was, General Carrick, the indomitable pillar of the Vanguard. Hair shot through with silver, eyes etched with battles too numerous to count, yet still ablaze with a warrior's fire. He strode towards us, his stride unwavering. Harper, you look like you've seen a ghost. There was the faintest quirk of his lips, the ghost of a smile that could melt entire star systems under his command. Sir, I stammered, saluting out of ragged instinct, you're supposed to be dead? Carrick barked a humorless laugh. The Vanguard doesn't die that easily. Turns out, those old eggheads knew a thing or two about playing possum. His gaze swept over the survivors, taking in the torn uniforms and the haunted expressions. You weren't meant to wake yet. Your failsafes weren't supposed to trigger. His voice trailed off, then steeled with resolve. The Skith are back, and they're bringing hell with them. A tremor ran through me, not fear, but a bone-deep weariness. The Skith awakening was a nightmare scenario we'd all but shelved away with our fading memories. They shouldn't be here, not in these numbers, not with this horrifying level of coordination. But, how? Amelia's question hung in the cavernous space as the battle raged around us. Carrick's jaw hardened. We have a traitor. Someone in the highest ranks has been playing a long, deadly game. They've been feeding the Skith information, technology, fueling their resurgence. The word hung like a death sentence in the charged air. A traitor amongst the Vanguard, the last bastion of humanity's hope. It was unthinkable. It was unforgivable. My hands clenched into fists. Betrayal tasted far more bitter than the blood on my cracked lips. Who? The single word was a growl from deep in my throat. Not here, not now. Carrick gestured towards the ongoing battle. Right now, we survive. We buy time for the rest of humanity to scramble a defense. It won't be pretty, but the Vanguard knows how to fight a losing war. And in that moment, I looked at the battle-scarred faces around me. The haggard techs who'd become warriors, the trembling recruits with fire in their eyes. I saw the faces from my past, the comrades I thought were long gone. We were an echo, a remnant. But we were here, we were fighting. We might lose. Hell, we probably would. But the vanguard, fueled by a mix of desperate courage and sheer stubbornness, was going to make the bastards pay dearly for trying to erase us. Orders, sir? I asked, voice surprisingly steady. The old soldier in me stirred, straightening my spine against the unimaginable odds. Carrick grinned, a flash of the old ferocity. Welcome back to the war, Captain Harper. First, we secure this bunker. Then, we find our traitor. And then, he leveled a glare worthy of facing down the Skith horde itself, we make them regret the day they ever woke the vanguard. Securing the bunker was a brutal dance between calculated strategy and raw survival. Under Carrick's direction, we transformed the maze of corridors into a death trap. We bolstered reinforced choke points, set up crossfire ambushes, and turned every blind corner into a killing field, leveraging both our makeshift tech and the vanguard reinforcements' unfamiliar, devastatingly powerful weaponry. The Skith threw themselves against our defenses in waves, their insectal tactics clashing with Carrick's relentless strategizing. For every trap we sprung, for every alien monstrosity we blasted to ash, they seemed to learn, adapt, and return stronger. Each roar of combat, each flash of energy fire was tinged with the knowledge that their numbers were relentless, their resurgence terrifyingly swift. In the snatches of frantic comms chatter between firefights, the full scope of the horror unfolded. The Skith weren't just infiltrators, they were launching coordinated strikes across the globe. Cities blazed, defenses crumbled, and the fragile peace humanity had scraped together after our supposed defeat was shattering. But the biggest blow fell when Carrick's voice, normally a resonant command, crackled over the comms with a note of sheer, icy fury. Vanguard Outpost Sigma is overrun. They were waiting for us, Harper. Someone gave them tactical intel on our hidden bases. The blood roared in my ears. Sigma was where we housed the next generation, the children raised from cryo alongside sleeper units like ours. If they had fallen. Children? My voice was barely a rasp. Secure, managed to get some out, heavy casualties, Carrick reported, his usual composure frayed almost to the breaking point. My world narrowed to a single, burning purpose. The traitor wasn't just some faceless manipulator. They had the blood of children on their hands. The bunker network became a haunting ground. We fought like crazed things, sleep abandoned. Amelia's face was a mask of grim determination. With each fallen Skith, her eyes grew colder, her shots more precise. The techs huddled closer, their fear sublimated into a desperate, industrious energy, jury rigging and scavenging with a speed that defied belief. Then came the order that ripped away my last sliver of hope. Harper, Carrick snapped, the backdrop of comm chatter a discordant symphony of panic and gunfire, evac order. The surface is a lost cause, and this bunker won't hold for long. We have to get what's left of the vanguard out of here. No. The protest tore from my throat before I could think. We can hold, we can turn this around. There's nothing left to turn around. Carrick's tone was steel-laced with exhaustion. We've been outgunned, outmaneuvered. All we can do now is salvage what's left. Get to Exfil Point Delta. There's a stealth shuttle with room for your team and some key personnel. Exfil. Retreat. Terms that tasted like ash on my tongue after a lifetime of defiant stands. But there was a wisdom to Carrick's order, however hard it was to swallow. The vanguard couldn't afford to be wiped out entirely. And so, fueled by fury and cold despair, we fell back. The battle became a bloody withdrawal, each corridor fought over with the ferocity of starving cornered beasts. With every step, the weight of failure, of the cities lost, of Sigma overrun, crushed me. Then, as we neared the launch bay, a single Skith warrior, larger and more heavily armored than any we'd encountered, burst from the shadows. Its guttural challenge echoed against the metal walls, reverberating in my skull like a death knell. My squad instinctively covered the rear, buying Carrick and myself precious seconds. Go, Amelia yelled, her plasma rifle spitting angry fire, forcing the creature to weave and dodge. Not without you, I yelled back, charging forward, blade extended. The others joined in, their desperate shouts lost in the roar of battle. And then, with impossible swiftness, the creature moved. Its blade sliced through Sergeant Miller like he was nothing more than smoke. Amelia's return fire singed the chitin, but it kept coming. And then it was on me, too fast, too strong. The world tilting as its barbed claws closed over my weapon arm, the sickening certainty that this was it, my end. A blur of motion, the guttural screech cut short, and General Carrick was there, his own battle-worn blade slicing through the creature's neck. It crumpled like a broken puppet, its black blood spraying in a grotesque arc. Sir, I began, but he silenced me with a raised hand. Go, Harper. That's an order. Live to fight another day. And before I could argue, he spun, flinging himself back into the fray. A wall of roaring skith swallowed him whole. And I ran, the echoing screams of my dying comrades and the weight of Carrick's sacrifice crushing me as I sprinted for a ship whose destination was unknown, the taste of defeat more bitter than death.